Hey everybody. So we are on October 29th, so we'll be looking at October 28th MTG stocks. As we can see, Arclight Phoenix here has gone the most, but really not too much movement here. I guess I should say that this isn't really supposed to be for like financial reasons or anything. We're just kind of looking at the cards that are kind of interesting or of interest in general. The other thing I want to show you here is that first video, I believe, is when Pioneer started. And if we go all the way down here, on the weekly, we can see that some of the huge spikes that we saw earlier, like Dig Through Time, Deathrite Shaman, Imbercleave is not part of this, but Shihili Ride, etc., they've all kind of gone down in price since we last saw them. So that's when I got to point that out, and that's why you have to be careful when you see these kind of spikes, because if you buy into the spike, you're could be bad for you. Anyways, Arclight Phoenix is probably more well known at this point, but it has a 3 mana, 1 red Phoenix, 3/2 with Flying Haste. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you cast 3 or more instant or sorcery spells this turn, return Arclight Phoenix from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this went down in price for a little bit, I think. It kind of came back up, and the reason why this card was really good, at least in Modern, was Faithless Looting. Helped us out a lot because Faithless Looting lets you draw 2 cards and then discard 2 cards. That kind of was one of the spells. And then, so if you discarded like 2 Phoenixes or something, or if you had 2 Phoenixes in your graveyard, then you cast another couple of 1 mana spells, and suddenly you got 2 or 3 Arclight Phoenixes, maybe on turn, probably like 2. I don't know how fast Modern gets, pretty fast, I'm assuming. But yeah, so Arclight Phoenix can be very spooky. But since Faithless Looting was banned, it hurt Arclight Phoenix a little bit. So I'm sure something came up where people found something somewhere, maybe even in Standard. Probably not Standard, but in Modern or Pioneer probably, where it helped out. But yeah, I like this card. Good for graveyard decks in general, but a little bit too expensive for me to care about. Then we have the Sylvan Caryatid, sure. It's a 1 colorless, 1 green, plant creature, 0/3. I really like this card. It's a defender hexproof, so it's hard to get rid of, especially with even 3 life. If they have like a AoE or something like that, it's 3 damage AoE is not too common. But then it has tap, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So I mean, it's just a really solid mana generator. Fairly hard to get rid of. I just like this card a lot. I mean, like the artwork on it too. It's kind of like a dryad in there. And if you're ever doing like a defender deck for EDH or something like Arcades, pretty solid. Let's see here. Now we have Hangar Walker. He is a XX cost. He is an artifact creature construct, 0/0. When he enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. So if you paid 4 mana, he would come in with 2 +1/+1. Or yeah, if you paid 4 mana, you put 2 into one X, 2 in the other, and then you come out with 2 +1/+1 counters. When he dies, you put a 1/1 colorless top-tier artifact creature token with flying onto the battlefield for each +1/+1 counter on him. Then you can pay 1 tap, put a +1/+1 counter on this guy. So there's some dumb things you can do with this in general. Like there's ways to like, what is it? Dethrone? No. Like Undying or Persist, something like that. But Undying would make more sense because it's +1/+1 counters. So basically, there's a way to bring it back from your graveyard with a +1/+1 counter on it. Then like remove that +1/+1 counter from him. He dies, you make a Thropter, and then you just keep doing that forever. It has some sort of infinite combo. Or you move your counters around, and etc. etc. It's kind of like Walking Ballista, I believe. Kind of the same concept. And like, it's funny because when I see this card by itself, I'm kind of like, eh. I mean, it's not bad for sure. It's probably one of the better like one of the X creatures that come with +1/+1 counters on him, just because he goes big and goes wide when he dies. And you can easily pump him up as it goes. But like, I wouldn't ever think of cheating him with the graveyard and then like doing infinite combos that way. I mean, it makes sense when I look at it. This is like I think a $15 card. Let's see. Let's go back. Sure. Let's go back and make sure real quick. Okay, he's like $11. I wouldn't pay that much for him, but he's an interesting card for sure. I do like the artwork here. It looks like almost looks like eyes are right here, and kind of like almost a little spooky boys. But all right. Next one here we have Rally the Ancestors. This is X and 2 white. This was on, I think this went from like 50 cents to like $2. So not a huge, still not like super expensive or anything, but I just thought it was an interesting card. It has it's instant speed. Return each creature card with converted mana cost X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Exile those creatures at the beginning of your next upkeep. Exile Rally of the Ancestors. So this is just I feel like there's a lot of neat things you can do with this. And they do get exiled at the end of the end step, but like if you're at least running red, you can give them haste probably in some way. Or if you just need blockers desperately. Like this is good for decks that aren't heavy reanimator decks. And so what I mean by that is, you know, if you had a black-white deck and you are like bringing stuff back from your graveyard constantly with black cards, or there are white cards that reanimate, like this one, I guess. But I think this is actually better for decks that don't reanimate a lot, because this is more like, well, I have a bunch of useless creatures in my graveyard, I might as well put this to use, and you can either use it as a huge last attack for them, or you can use it as a huge heavy block for yourself. So I think it's kind of an interesting card. It's just a either save your life or potentially kill someone. I like it. And the artwork, yeah, again, I know artwork, but it's like the it's kind of like this. It looks like I'm guessing like a desert here, and just kind of reminds me of like Sand Warriors, or bringing back from the almost like a Return of the Mummy or something like that. It kind of reminds me of that a little bit. Let's see, and I think it's the last MTG stock card. MTG stocks card, yeah. So here is our commander for the day, Wart the Raidmother. This was just a interesting card that I saw earlier, and it kind of makes me want to make a commander out of this. But it is a 4 colorless, red or green, so 6 mana in total. It is a legendary creature, Goblin Shaman. I wish it was kind of a Goblin Elf, because that'd be really cool to make a Goblin Elf tribal. But anyways, when he enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1 red and green Goblin Warrior creature tokens. There's also a 3/3 creature, I should put it in there. Each red or green instant or sorcery spell you cast has Conspire. As you cast a spell, you may tap 2 untapped creatures you control that share a color with it. When you do, copy it, and you may choose new targets for this copy. So what's really neat about this card is, so you know, like you can be like, oh, I can, so you get 2 creatures originally, and basically this allows you to immediately conspire with those 2 creature tokens that you get. So, you know, if you're like, oh, I can cast Lightning Bolt twice now, ooh, which is nice. But I think this is really cool for doing things like, there's a couple of spells that are like 3 mana or something and create 3 1/1 goblins or something. And so when you have that, you create 3 1/1 goblins, and then you can tap 2 of your creatures to make 3 more. I think there's some really good synergy there, and it makes a lot of sense being goblin. And the fact that it is green, you can do that with elves too, because I think there's quite a few elf sorcery or instants that allow you to make more elves. So I really like the idea of this card. Yeah, it's a neat card, and I feel like there's some untapped potential in there. Hi, Moon. Let's see here. All right. And kind of the last card to look at tonight before our random cards is Bullets of Citadel. I know this isn't a newer. This is a newer card, so it's probably not too surprising or anything. But this is just a kind of a crazy card to me. This is 3 colorless, black, black, black. So it is very hard to get out if you are running more than 2 colors, I'd say. But legendary artifact. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may play the top card of your library. if you cast a spell this way, pay life equal to its converted mana cost rather than pay its mana cost. So this is pretty crazy. You add this out, and now you can start kind of going through your deck as quickly as you need to. Lands will stop you, of course, because you can't play lands unless you haven't played a land for the turn. But if you have ways to like kind of discard the top card of your deck in some way, it's pretty neat. I actually have this in my Anji deck, and works out really well because basically with Anji, if you ever get stuck on a land, you can discard one of your Madness cards, untap her, then get rid of that land card on top of your deck, and then you can use Bullets of Citadel to kind of keep digging through your deck. So just a very neat card. And I mean, besides, don't even have to worry about Anji on this. It's any deck that has black in it, I think, can really benefit from this deck or this card. And I'm surprised it's only like $1.50. If you don't have this card, I would suggest getting at least one copy because it's just amazing. I love it. I love it. Then also, the other effect is nothing to scoff at either. It is tap, sacrifice 10 non-land permanents. Each opponent loses 10 life. This is actually pretty awesome. I was never thinking I'd be able to use this in my Anji deck, but I actually got to a point where it really benefited me. I was able to sacrifice off one of my creatures that was frogged. It was actually Anji that got frogged. And so, yeah, like, this is, I don't know, solid card. If you don't have it, I would suggest buying one or two. All right. Bye. And then for our random cards for the night, let's see here. Random card number 1. Disdainful Stroke. Hey, what are you doing? Come here. Ah, puppy. Look at this puppy. You want to say hi? Okay. I guess he's camera shy. All right. So, Disdainful Stroke is 1 colorless, 1 blue. Instant. Counter target spell with converted mana cost 4 or greater. Okay, just a counter spell. Nothing too amazing. It's not bad for sure. It's just a low mana cost counter spell. And the artwork's okay. All right, and then for random card number 2 here, let me do a third one depending on what we get. Okay, this is all right. We got an old card, so that means it's going to be 1 billion lines of text. So it's 2 mana, Illusionary Mask, artifact. You pay X. You may choose a creature card in your hand whose mana cost could be paid by some amount of or all of the mana you spent on X. That was a really weird way to say that, but basically, if you had, like, I guess a 4 mana cost creature, you pay X, and then you could, so as long as you pay at least 4, you can put that 4 mana cost creature. So if you do, you may cast that card face down as a 2/2 creature spell without paying its mana cost. So basically morph. If the creature that spell becomes, if the creature that spell becomes as it resolves has not been turned face up, when assign or deal damage, we dealt damage, or become tapped. Instead, it's turned face up and assigns or deals damage, is dealt damage, or becomes tapped. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. Okay, well, this is a weird card, and we probably don't need to do a third one after looking at this one. So it's kind of an interesting card, and I think the reason why it's so expensive, of course, here is the fact that it is a reserve list card, I believe. It doesn't really like do much. I think this would be good in a morph deck, I guess. But let's see. So if you do, you may cast that card face down as a 2/2 creature. Cost. So I mean, it's basically just, it's like Yu-Gi-Oh almost. You're like, haha, I got you with this face down card. It's kind of an interesting thing. I guess the other good thing about it though is that it lets you color correct a little bit. So if you had like an extremely difficult creature to put out, so like I don't know, like a Wooburg creature like costs white, blue, black, green, red, then this would probably be okay to put it out. Yeah, never seen this card before, that's for sure. The artwork's funny, having little dizzy eyes on them and dizzy swirls in the background. But good card to end on, I think. It's an interesting card nonetheless. But all right, everybody, hope you have a good night, and I'll see you next time.